Hello again, everyone. Welcome into the UFC podcast. I'm Andre Kachaturian of Nesson.com, joined with Matt Perino of UFC.com. And Matt, look at this. I'm wearing blue, you're wearing red. I'm fighting out of the blue corner, and you're on the red corner. This is going to be, we're ready to grapple here.
I know. I mean, I'm previewing the fight. I think you're in big trouble. You're probably going to go down in one round. So
I disagree. I've hired a Greek personal trainer the last two months. I've been working with him. I've shed some weight. I've gotten strong. But nobody will ever want to watch us fight. Let's talk about UFC 212. What happened there? Jose Aldo losing in the third round to Max Holloway, losing his belt. And in my opinion, I think he's done. I talked about it last week. I think it's over for Jose Aldo. What are your thoughts on what happened in the fight and about my claim?
You know, I'm going to stick with, Jose Aldo. I don't think he's done by any stretch. I think what we're seeing here is the arrival of a superstar in Max Holloway. I mean, this guy, 10-fight win streak in the UFC is no joke. I mean, this guy established himself as a top 15 pound-for-pound fighter on the roster. And with this win and the way that he won, I think he solidified himself as, a top 3 or 4 guy in the company. You look at, Jose Aldo was having some success early in this fight. He rocked Max with a nice combination, then a knee to the head up along the fence. And Max just ate it. And, towards the end of the second round, just started smiling at him because, he's a 25-year-old in his prime champion that's really, really good. And I think what that fight did was tell us more about Max than it did about Jose Aldo.
Interesting. I do think it says a lot about Max as well. I think we are seeing a new star in the promotion. The guy is fantastic, as you mentioned, 10-fight winning streak. And you are right. Actually, the scorecards, the first 2 rounds, they actually gave it to Aldo. But then you see Holloway coming out, and he's just such a violent puncher. We talked about it before the fight. Comes out and just wins it in the third round. And yeah, I feel like we have a new star here. But in terms of Aldo, look, if you're not the champion, then what are you? Look, you're just. I think his days at the top are over. They're behind him. The McGregor fight was the beginning point of that. He kind of got lucky that McGregor decided to pursue another division, so he was kind of crowned the champ again after beating Frankie Edgar for the interim belt. But I think it's just done now. Maybe he'll get another shot just because of who he is and what he's done. I think he will get another title shot probably soon, maybe in the next year or two. But I don't know. I just think the way Holloway has just fought in that fight, he's the new guy. He's here. Aldo, best days behind him. And that's okay. I said it last week. That's okay. It happens to everybody. You reach the top, and then your best days are behind you.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not a great place to be at. I mean, 2 fights ago, what happened with Conor McGregor, then to get beaten so in the way that he was beaten against Max Holloway in that third round was devastating. But it's always about the stories to me. And what this allows Jose Aldo to do is to go back to the drawing board, find that motivation again. I mean, I think he was motivated coming into this fight, but this is a whole different kind of thing. The McGregor thing was a 13-second kind of freak knockout. Yeah. I'm not taking anything away from Conor. Obviously, that was a spectacular performance. But this is one where you go back to the drawing board and you look at the film and how Max was able to establish himself striking in that third round, and then the way he was dominated on the ground. If you look back when Jose Aldo fought Chad Mendes, Chad took him down. Better wrestler, better grappler than Max Holloway. He took him down, and it plays in all of Jose Aldo's highlight reels. He kind of switched his hips, kind of made a double move, and was able to elevate himself back up to his feet. When he tried to do the same thing against Max in this fight, Max was able to keep him on the mat and keep raining down the punches. And that's something that we haven't seen from Jose Aldo before. He's always been able to get back up off of his back. So you're right. Are his skills deteriorating a bit? Perhaps. But you know what? All the greats got to figure out a way to deal with things when their game maybe isn't as strong as it once was. And I think Jose Aldo will do that. It's just like a guy like Michael Jordan later in his career, developing the jump shot. I think Jose Aldo will implement new things into his game, maybe utilize the takedowns more, his ground game more, get more aggressive and that kind of thing, and we'll see where we go in the next couple fights. But he's not done, Andre. Get out of here.
He's only 30 years old. He's going to be there for a long time. I just don't think he'll ever be champion again, and that's okay. I mean, that's totally fine. But now let's talk about the new champ, Max Holloway. Plenty of options. He took a little jab at Conor McGregor after his victory, and you know, that's the guy everyone's looking at. So we have the former featherweight champion Conor McGregor, and now the current heavyweight champion Max Holloway. Everybody would love to see that fight. You got a guy with a 10-fight winning streak, and obviously Conor McGregor and what he brings to the table. Do we want to see this fight down the road? Is Max Holloway going to wait that long to fight this guy, or is he going to do something different? Because, you know, we all know McGregor is involved in his own boxing shenanigans. What are we going to see here? What's going to happen, Matt? Enlighten us.
I think, well, you got to look at just the facts right off the bat, right? Conor McGregor is involved in a long process of trying to get a fight with Floyd Mayweather. We don't know when that's going to happen. Yeah. He says he wants to fight 2 times this year, which would be one against Floyd, and then he'd come back hopefully to the UFC later in the year. But he's the 155-pound champion right now. What's the incentive for him to maybe go back down to 145? If Max Holloway is that best fight for him, perhaps that's the play. George St. Pierre is going to need a tag team partner later this year because Dana White said he's going to have to go down to 170 pounds to fight for the title. But maybe George, he said he'd go down to 155 to fight Conor. So there's a bunch of options for Conor, and for Max, I like the way that he's going about this. He's like, I'm here to clean out my division. I'm not here for Conor McGregor. I'm not here for any in particular fighter. I'm here to beat the best of the best, to build my legacy, which, by the way, the Max Holloway legacy is already so impressive. I mean, you look at 11 wins in a row, some of the guys that he's taken out on the way to that run. Anthony Pettis, Jose Aldo, potentially Frankie Edgar next, which, by the way, I think that should 100% be the fight. Frankie Edgar is the perfect, you know, next test for Max Holloway. And you know what? Conor could happen down the road. I think they fought a really good fight, you know, years ago in one of the both of their first fights in the UFC early on in their career. So I'd love to see him run it back, but there's a lot of options for both guys right now.
Absolutely. I have to agree with you there. I think Max Holloway is doing the right thing. He wants to clean out that division. He wants it to be his. Making the right approach. I think you said it. I completely agree with you. A fight against Frankie Edgar is a logical choice for his next fight. But you know, the McGregor thing, everyone's gonna, you know, it's just, that would be a hell of a fight to watch. You talk about the best trash talker against the hottest fighter and probably in the promotion right now on the men's side. That would be an exciting, scintillating matchup. But you know, we'll see what happens with that. But first, let's look forward to this weekend. You know, it's not a numbered card this weekend, but we're going to the land down under in New Zealand, and we have Derrick Lewis fighting against Mark Hunt in a heavyweight bout. And I love Derrick Lewis. He's so entertaining to watch. The guy's such a violent fighter. 18 wins, 16 of them knockouts in his career. He's going up against Mark Hunt, who will have a lot of fans down there in New Zealand, in Auckland. That's where the fight is on Saturday. So what do you see in this fight?
So it's an interesting time. 2 guys at very different places in their careers. You got Derrick Lewis riding a 6-fight win streak, the most wins in the heavyweight division since 2014, against the guy in Mark Hunt, who has had his moments in the UFC. I mean, you think back to his walk-away knockout against Roy Nelson, almost beating Fabricio Verdum for the interim title a few years back. The guy's always game. He's must-see TV because at any moment he can land that big right hand and walk away and end a fight. For Derrick Lewis, he has the advantage in this fight, to me, in all areas. He's bigger, he's longer, he's heavier, and I think that what you're going to see in this fight is him try to get inside on Mark Hunt. I think he's a little bit maybe quicker as Mark Hunt gets a little bit older. The quickness kind of dwindles a little bit. And once he gets inside and he gets his hands on Mark Hunt, I think that, you know, Mark's going to have a tough time keeping this one standing. And we saw what he did against Travis Brown. Once that fight hits the mat, this guy is so big, so aggressive, so violent, like you said, he can finish a fight in moments.
I have to agree with you again. We've been agreeing a lot, even though we're wearing blue and red, and we're on the blue corner, red corner today, and we thought we were going to come to blows. But I have to agree with you, man. Look, Derrick Lewis, 5 of his last 6 fights have ended via knockout. That's one stat for you. Another stat for you is Mark Hunt in the last 8, 3-4-1 record, and also a no contest. So I guess it's his last 9 fights, and a 12-11-1 record. Overall, it's just, the guy's basically a 500th fighter, which is very rare in the UFC. You don't really see those kind of records in the UFC. So you're looking at it, the very, very hot fighter in terms of Lewis right now. And again, as I mentioned, 16 knockouts in his 18 wins. The guy can just finish a fight at any moment. I'm going to take Lewis in this one, and I'm guessing that's your pick as well. You said you.
I'm going to take Lewis as well, and I think this is a big fight for the heavyweight division. You got a guy at the top, Stipe Miocic, who's 1 win away from breaking the all-time mark for title defenses in the heavyweight division at just 3. Because in this division, it's really hard to stay at the top because one big punch with those small gloves, with the size these guys have, and it's over. And you look at a guy like Derrick Lewis, 7 straight wins if he takes out Hunt. He's right there for a potential title fight. I think Francis Ngannou is maybe a fight or 2 away still. I would love to see Derrick Lewis and Francis meet eventually. But I think that, you're right. Derrick Lewis, marketable, fun guy, really cool on social media. He's got a cool personality, and I think that fans will be drawn to him. Stipe Miocic makes sense, great fight, big time for the heavyweight division.
Never forget, after he beat Roy Nelson last year, Derrick Lewis, during the press conference, put his head on the mat, on the podium table, and just knocked out and took a nice little nap during while Anderson Silva was giving his press conference. I'll never forget that. That was just what a moment. Derrick Lewis, love the guy. All right, let's move on now and do some fact or fiction. We all know UFC 214 is going to be a devastating matchup between 2 light heavyweight titans, Jon Jones and Daniel Cormier. Is their second bout together. But you would be more excited, it seems like, for Alexander Gustafsson. Is that true? Fact or fiction? An Alexander Gustafsson versus Jon Jones rematch would be more exciting than the Jon Jones-Daniel Cormier rematch. Fact or fiction?
All right, this is, let me start off by saying they're both equally huge fights. Anything with Jon Jones at this point in his career, a guy that many consider to be the GOAT upper echelon fight. But what we've seen in the last 2 weeks all of a sudden is very interesting. I've been on record, I am a huge Daniel Cormier fan, not only as a fighter, but as a person. I think that the guy is, second to none when it comes to, his example in the sport, his work ethic, what he's accomplished, what he's demonstrated as a father. I love the guy. I can't wait for this fight. It's a huge moment in his career. But Alexander Gustafsson has kind of been out of the spotlight for a while. We've had Daniel Cormier. He's been dominating. This fight with Jon Jones has fallen off so many times. It feels kind of like, we're kind of holding our breath a little bit. And then all of a sudden you insert Alexander Gustafsson in this whole thing. And you think back to that fight. A lot of people thought Alexander Gustafsson beat Jon Jones at UFC 165. And they are going at it. They don't like each other, just like DC and Jones don't. But there's something there. There's this element of what if because of how close Gustafsson fought him in the first time. And hey, in a month or two here, UFC 214, Daniel Cormier might put a stop to all of this because he might beat Jones. And then we might have to see Gustafsson versus DC2, which, by the way, that fight, one of the best light heavyweight title fights in history. The bottom line in here, fact or fiction, whatever fight's more exciting, we cannot lose with this kind of trio of superstars at 205. This division is very exciting right now. Yeah. A lot of people arguing it's very top-heavy. True. But the storylines are all there. And then all of a sudden, you got Anthony Johnson out there getting a little bit maybe bored on the sidelines. He saw Alexander Gustafsson versus Glover Teixeira. He tweeted that, maybe he needs to get his name back into the fold, and he's still, in my opinion, in the prime of his career. There's a lot of storylines, a lot of fun fights. 205 pounds, pretty exciting right now.
You talk about Gustafsson and Jones not liking each other. Recently, Gustafsson went on and told Ariel Helwani, he said, quote, he's been getting caught for everything. This is about Jones. It feels like one thing after the other, but the way he was sitting on the stage with DC and he just said he did cocaine a week before he fought him, he's not even embarrassed telling that stuff. He's just proud telling that stuff. For me, it's just, you don't do that. Come on, not with being such a good fighter. So he definitely respects him as a fighter, but not so much as a person. Doesn't like the fact that he got caught. And he even Gustafsson admit that Jones might have been, quote, on something during their fight, as in PEDs. So if Jones does clean up his act, hopefully he doesn't get caught for that kind of stuff ever again. I don't know if it'll be a bigger fight than Jones-Cormier. I think obviously right now Cormier has the belt, so just for that reason, Jones and Cormier is the bigger fight. But you're 100% absolutely correct. You throwing Gustafsson in the mix. You got three interesting characters in that light heavyweight division. It's definitely an exciting time in the light heavyweight division. One division where it's not so exciting anymore is the women's bantamweight division. Ronda Rousey.
I'm gonna come at you there, Andre. That's one of my biggest frustrations right now with kind of the MMA community is that there's not more people rallying around Amanda Nunes. I think it's a very exciting time.
Wow.
She's one of the most exciting fighters on the UFC roster. I mean, everybody's like, oh, UFC 213, you know, that main event, you know, oh my gosh. Did you watch that first fight? It was great. There's questions that need to be answered here. Amanda Nunes just decapitated two legends of the game, MIESHA Tate, Ronda Rousey, in successive order. I tweeted out last week, and a lot of fans took it a little bit too literally, but I said, what happened if somebody came along in the light heavyweight division and knocked out Daniel Cormier and John Jones in the first round in consecutive fights? Now listen, obviously it's not a perfect example, but it's kind of the same thing. Ronda and MIESHA are legends. They've dominated that division for years. And she came along, Amanda Nunes, and just wiped them out completely. It's a very exciting division right now, and I'm very excited for this title fight. But continue.
Interesting. Okay. Your point taken, Matt. Point taken. But you talk about MIESHA Tate and Ronda Rousey and MIESHA Tate. The only reason why I said what I said is you don't have those two women in the division anymore right now. One is retired, the other one is nowhere to be found. And MIESHA Tate recently came out and told MMA Junkie about how she was blessed to have a rival like Ronda Rousey because, quote, without the two of us, there wasn't enough. She wasn't enough by herself, and I wasn't enough definitely by myself. And then she went on to say how she doesn't think a trilogy would happen between them because she's engaged to Rousey's engaged to Travis Brown, and Tate said she doesn't have a desire to return either. But how awesome would it be? Fact or fiction? These two need to come back and complete their trilogy.
Okay, so I thought a lot about this, and it's an interesting question, and I'm going to go with fiction, but let me explain a couple points why I don't think it's important. First off, for Ronda Rousey, she won twice against MIESHA Tate.
Yes.
So for her to come back and fight her a third time, the upside maybe isn't there as much for her. So you asked just the simple question, does it need to happen? Well, from one side, it doesn't need to happen. From MIESHA's side also, I've spent some time with MIESHA Tate recently. I was with her in London. She was a guest fighter. She came on our show, Forrest Griffin and I, on the Rankings Report to guest host. And guess what? She's a phenomenal MMA analyst. I mean, I thought her work during UFC 207 when Ronda was fighting Amanda, that whole week on Undisputed with Skip Bayless and all the UFC on Fox shows, she was spectacular. She has such a mind for the game. You know, a lot of fighters go on the show and do a great job, but she has an analytical brain. She's really able to get her points across. They make sense. She does it. She's very concise about the way that she breaks down fights, and I think she has a huge future in that. Not to mention, she has her own podcast now. She's doing a ton of traveling. She's an ambassador for the sport. She's a pioneer of the sport, so I don't think she necessarily needs it. But then again, would I like to see it? Of course.
Well, yeah, I'm going to go with fact here. I agree she's a great analyst. She's great. But I'm talking about for the viewer, the fan, us, looking at the bantamweight division. You talked about Nunes and how great she is, and I agree with you. But okay, let's say she beats Shevchenko. And then what for Nunes? What is she going to do? She's going to fight, what, Juliana Pena or maybe Raquel Pennington, Sarah McMahon? Oh, that's just not as exciting. I would love to see Rousey and Tate come out, trilogy fight, see who wins that, and fight for the belt against Nunes. Bring that division some flavor and some spice. Bring it back to life, because you're right, Nunes is great, but her being great might ruin the division. I think she's going to destroy everybody in front of her, and it's going to be kind of like a Demetrius Johnson situation where you have one guy just destroying everyone, and you know, it's just not as exciting.
Did you know who Alexander Gustafsson was before he fought John Jones? If you're the casual fan, did you know who he was? Were you excited about him? Because I'll tell you right now, John Jones was going through Shogun, Rashad Evans, Quentin Rampage Jackson, Lyoto Machida, names of the sport. And then all of a sudden, Alexander Gustafsson comes along. He's like nobody, right, at the time? But
Right.
then all of a sudden, you have that fight, and he turns into a huge star. Listen, 135, with two huge names leaving the division, has left a void. But guess what happens in the UFC? Voids get filled by upcoming talent. Before Conor McGregor, everybody was saying Anderson Silva got knocked out twice, or got beat twice by Chris Weidman. GSP's retired. Who's left? The UFC's done. Then all of a sudden, the Ronda Rousey revolution. Conor McGregor. It's cyclical. It's always going to
Would you
continue
say
to
though?
happen.
Would you at
New
least agree though
stars
that
will
the
rise and go ahead. I couldn't hear you. Sorry.
Sorry, no, I'm sorry. Would you at least agree that the women's strawweight division is more exciting right now than the bantamweight division right now, at this moment, as we speak?
I think that they're different. I don't necessarily think one is more exciting than the other. You have a dominant champion, which some fans might appreciate in Joanna Jędrzejczyk with a couple contenders. But I mean, even the top contender in that division right now, Claudia Gadelha, she's lost to the champion twice. So we're going to run that back. How exciting is that? I mean, I'm excited for it. Fans are excited for it, but you can make an argument that it's not exciting. Amanda Nunes is a fresh face, a dominant face. She's finishing fights, and she's finishing them in devastating fashion. You even go back to her fight against Kat Zingano when she lost a few years ago. She's got to rematch that fight. She was beating Kat Zingano up bad. Kat came back to win the fight, but she is an entertaining fighter. It's what we hunger for as MMA fight fans. We want fighters that are go out there, bring it right away, and try to finish fights, and that's what Amanda is. And I'll tell you right now, every time that she's fighting, I'm dialed in. I'm excited because as a fight fan, going back to the beginning of time, that's what we're looking for.
Okay, Matt, looks like we ended up coming to blows anyway. I mean, we started off so peacefully agreeing with each other. We had some
I
disagreement.
get fired up about Amanda. I think she's a big deal. I think she's a great person.
Yeah, I agree with you. I love her. She's great.
It's the same thing with Jose Aldo. There's a bit of with the language barrier, it's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough that fans maybe don't gravitate to them as fast. But as she continues to build her legacy, I think people are going to be very impressed with what Amanda Nunes brings and what she does in the octagon.
Cool. Well, Matt, thanks again for joining us this week. This Saturday, you'll see UFC Fight Night in New Zealand. Derrick Lewis and Mark Hunt. We'll be back next week to discuss that and what's ahead in the UFC. Thanks again for joining us, Matt.
Take care.